Welcome back to Horace Goes Podcasting for gamers with Pong memories. I am Kieran Breer. Now, if you've taken a look at our podcast feed lately, you might have noticed a distinct, slight worrying lack of us in your ears for the first part of this year. Yep, it's confession time. John and I haven't managed to drop a single episode yet in 2026, but before you start questioning our commitment to the cause, I promise you we have a very good, incredibly stressful excuse. John has been tackling the ultimate high-stakes strategy game that is a massive, incredibly complicated real-life house move. He's been buried under cardboard boxes, fighting off removal teams, and trying to figure out which drawer he packed his gaming cables into. The great news is, the PC's finally plugged in, the tea is brewing, and we are both absolutely delighted to be back, and that he's out of the moving trenches and back recording again. And what an episode we have lined up to break our silence. Today we are talking to an absolute industry royalty. Our guest has spent over 30 years defining the visual landscape of gaming. If you grew up painting Citadel miniatures, or if you've spent weeks of your life lost in massive digital worlds, his dark, intricate imagination has almost certainly crossed your path. I'm thrilled to say that today we'll be talking to the legendary concept artist and illustrator, Mark Gibbons. John and I are going to be diving deep into Mark's incredible journey. We're going to be talking to him about his early days at Games Workshop, where his gritty ink work helped create the Warhammer 40k lore. We'll also look at his time at Sony Cambridge, developing Primal and many other games, including working with James Wilson, before his friend and colleague Andy Chambers, Warhammer royalty, got him across to California to join the powerhouse teams at Blizzard and then Riot. But it's not just a history lesson. We'll also talk about the modern reality of being an older gamer and the effect of AI in modern game development. And Mark will also talk about how he's been creating RPGs with Rookery Publications and the creative freedom that brings in his latest chapter of his massive career in making games. But before we bring Mark into the hot seat, a quick piece of housekeeping. If you want to keep up with our future lineup or drop us a comment on today's chat, make sure you're following us on Facebook through our Horace Goes Podcasting page, or hit us up with a DM on our Instagram account. Just search for Horace Goes Podcasting. All the links are right there in the show notes. And of course, if you're enjoying these trips down memory lane and want to help us get the show in front of more ears, give us a thumbs up, tap the subscribe button, leave us a review on your favourite streaming platform. Your support keeps our servers running. So settle into your favourite gaming chair, get your best headphones on, folks. Let's welcome Mark Gibbons to the show. Welcome today with our guest, Mark Gibbons, who joins us across the whole world, almost, from the other side of the USA, from where we are, the opposite side. So, hi, and welcome to Horace Goes Podcasting, Mark.
It's an absolute pleasure to be here, gentlemen.
It's great to have you here. Finally, after a little while, it's taken us a few months to organise this, but it's great to be here now.
Yes, we've had to sort of, our schedules, clearly packed schedules. We've had to move things around.
That's it.
Disappoint
100%.
other people to be here today. Yeah.
And of course, John's here too.
Hello. I've got a new house.
Congratulations.
Well done.
Thank you very much. So, Mark, we've got a cracker of a first question for you, Mark. So, imagine you're on a desert island. But clearly you've got a PC, console, power, internet connection, and the choice of a library of games to choose from. What game is it going to be that's going to occupy your time on the desert island?
Right. Oh, so, okay. Assuming I can't use the internet to get myself rescued from this island, or it's an intentional, no. it's an intentional isolation.
The complete perversion, Mark, of the use of the internet for that rescue purposes.
Well, I mean, something with legs, I suppose. Something that's going to last me a long time. Either it's a very long game, or has huge amounts of replayability. My my gut reaction, because of stuff I played in recent years, would be Baldur's Gate 3. Because I played through it once, and I think it was about 240 hours I put into that one playthrough. And even as I was playing it, I was thinking, okay, next time I play through, I'm going to pick this character, and these are going to be my kind of companions. So I think that would see me through many months of desert isolation. I suppose another alternative would be a game that is just a kind of no-brainer, addictive, endless levels sort of game, even like a Plants vs Zombies. You could play that for years. I think just switching your brain off and just playing through it. If what you're looking for is something to just fill the endless days. But Baldur's Gate was I don't finish many games. So when I do finish one, particularly one that's, as I say, over 200 hours. And you still feel like you scratched the surface. I mean, I think it's a colossal achievement as a game, but also something that kind of really drew me back into that RPG, contemporary D&D. It was a bit of a treat.
I haven't played Baldur's Gate.
No.
What is it that brings you into it?
I think the options, the sort of the flexibility, the choices that you have when you're playing it. You can play the game pretty much any way you want. You can do pretty much anything you like, and it never feels. Although you have your typical sort of dialogue trees, it still feels like almost any option is available to you. You can play it as a true villain. That's actually a popular option, to take the to walk a dark path, and the range of classes and the range of races. It feels like a truly open world, as much as any video game really can. And the richness of it, it's beautifully built. The visuals are fantastic. The audio, the character development is really fun. It just felt like it didn't come from one of the big studios, which I think is another thing. It's clearly a labor of love, and consequently I think makes you want to indulge in that, to reward the dedication that the developers had by putting in the hours to play it.
It's going to be on my to-do list.
Right on, there you go.
It's down. I'm up for it.
It must have been a big contract it was Larian, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Do you play it single player, or have you played it multiplayer at all?
No, I pretty much all my gaming is single player. Even kind of MMOs like World of Warcraft, I played as a solo leveler. I played it I quested. I didn't raid. I didn't get in the dungeons. When I was at Blizzard, I was as if you play WoW and you're at Blizzard, you're invited into the sort of the Blizzard Guild. And I got kicked out of the Blizzard Guild for not playing enough. And I'm thinking, you little bitches, I'm building this game. You can't kick me out. But they can. They clearly can.
Just sat in the corner on your own.
Well, it's the solo experience. I don't really want to be playing online with people, even with friends. I'm kind of like, I'd rather not bother. But I played on a PvP server, which meant I was always coming across players from the opposite side. I was Horde. I was always running into Alliance players. And because I didn't raid, I never had good gear. So it was always a bit of a thrill and a bit of a moment of terror when I saw a character running in my direction with the red letters above their head. I thought, oh no, what do I do? Do I stand and fight, or do I run and hide? No. But that ended up creating some of the most interesting and exciting moments of play for me. So I didn't mind the thrill of that.
So you worked with our previous guest, Jason Wilson.
Yeah.
During when we were having a chat before, what you described as a golden era developing for the PS2 at Sony Cambridge. You're lead artist on projects like Primal or a 24 license. So looking back, what was the secret sauce of that Cambridge studio that allowed you to make state-of-the-art games with only 30 or 40 people versus the vast undertakings these days?
Yeah, 30 to 40 people, which at the time felt like, well, this is a big team. And of course, yeah. Now it's no, and it's like 500 people and 16 UI artists, and the numbers now are insane.
That is insane.
I think it was, well, again, it did feel like a golden age. I think the original PlayStation and then the PS2 were absolutely a golden age of game development. I think it was the first time really that video games broke into the public consciousness to that extent. PlayStation, I think, was absolutely pivotal in that. And I think at Cambridge, I think it still felt like a sort of a pioneering time. And everybody, I was about 5 years older than most of my teammates because I'd come from, I already had a career as a traditional illustrator and concept artist. So everybody was a bit younger than me, but already had, successful titles under the belt. And there was a sort of wide-eyed, naive, it turns out, enthusiasm and this just sort of expectation that we can do anything. We can do anything. Here we are. We have the backing of the biggest publisher in the business at that time, Sony had bought Millennium. Was it Millennium Interactive? The name of the studio, I can't recall. But they were the studio that were developing Medieval, and Sony comes along and says, "Oh, we really like what you're doing," and rather than just publish it, we want the studio. So you had the backing of Sony at the height of the PlayStation. So anything, they would give you anything, and they didn't really question it. You were not that. I didn't feel I was being held accountable by Sony management down in London, and they were kind of, when we were making Primal, it was like, yeah, whatever you need, what do you want to do? Who do you want for your voice acting? What can we help you out with? So it was kind of glorious. And I had done a bit of work in video game development. I'd worked as a concept artist and sort of semi-lead for a studio down in Taunton called Tygon Software, who were being published by Eidos. So I kind of got my feet wet in the industry then. And unfortunately, the game they were making got cancelled, which is when I then reached out, I think, to a recruiter, and they put me in touch with Sony. And it was like, "Ooh, Sony, in Cambridge, the guys that made Medieval." "Oh, yeah, that'd be an amazing place to work." So it just felt like it still felt a little bit of the wild frontier about it, a little bit of a sense of we can do anything. The industry seemed really supportive and exciting at that time.
But why do we now need these 500 people rather than a tighter knit community in the past?
I think if you're making the AAA or now the quadruple A games of that sort of, really. Gosh. I think if you're making games of that scale and scope, the technology, the march of technology has gotten those big studios to the point where the graphics have to look like this. We have to have, the engine has to be able to do this. It's just. And it'll still take 4 or 5 years to make the game. I think the indie scene can still be two guys in a garage making a game in less than 12 months. But the cutting edge of the industry is just, well, no, this is how long it's going to take. If you want Grand Theft Auto 6, I think it's going to take this amount of time. It's going to cost $2 billion to make. We need to sell, I don't know, 50 million copies to break even, maybe. Probably some insane amount of money. So it's just the way that it's gone. I don't know if a contraction is inevitable. Apparently, PS5 was the first time that the sales numbers sort of hadn't increased. Well, Sony never did a price drop, which is what they normally do. Like a year into a console's lifestyle, they'll do a bundle. They'll chuck a couple of good games in, and the price will come down to encourage, to keep sales going on. But it hasn't happened. A new PS5 costs more now than it did when it came out, and a lot of people apparently haven't adopted the PS5. They're waiting. They're sticking with the PS4, which is what I've done.
Yeah,
I haven't gone out and bought
good
PS5.
Enough.
I think the acceptable level of technology is like, the games don't need to look any better than this, really. Really great late PS4, early PS5 game, like that's fine. I don't need the next level of ray tracing or whatever it might be to improve the shadows. It's fine. And if you're going to charge me $100 for the game, if you're going to charge me $100 for your new game, I'm really not interested.
We're not bottomless pits of money.
No.
About projects that you worked on, like Primal 2 and a PS2 version of Medieval, both got pulled and your time there. For a concept artist, how do you handle the grief of pouring months of visual world building into a project that then the public never gets to see?
Well, I think as a concept artist, it's part of your job is to throw stuff against the wall and hope some of it sticks. So that sort of the expectation that a lot of your stuff will never see the light of day is sort of built into the job. Obviously, when it's a whole project, it's a little tougher to take that hit. But yeah, I mean, specifically when Primal didn't do as well as Sony had hoped, but we'd already started working on the sequel on the assumption that they'd want another one, and then they said no, actually we can't justify investing another 3 or 4 years into the game because the first one didn't do anything. You sort of take that on the chin and go, okay, well, what else can we do here that you might like? Which is when we moved to developing Medieval for the PS2. Because at that point, the first Medieval game, on the two, Medieval and Medieval 2, on the original PlayStation, had sold 1.5 million copies, which was big numbers for those days. Yeah. So we were like, okay, well, yeah, and we all got very excited about doing a new Medieval, bringing it to PlayStation 2. And then Sony, I think it was Sony marketing that turned around and said, well, we don't know how to market a Medieval for PlayStation 2. I mean, like, really?
What was different?
Because maybe you could just sell it to the 1.5 million people who bought the first games.
Yeah.
But they were very focused on sort of lifestyle gaming at the time. So Sony London they were making things like The Getaway, which was like Guy Ritchie's Grand Theft Auto, and again things like the Wipeout games, which were very much audio driven. So they were into the cool of PlayStation, and I think Medieval just felt a bit old hat to them, this sort of quirky third-person action adventure. So it got, as I understand it, it got pulled from PlayStation 2 by because of what marketing felt about it, and so they said, well, we did end up actually making Medieval for the PSP which was basically largely a reboot of the original game, but made for the handheld. But the main team that had done Primal was then put onto 24. They thought we should get a license. That's more surefire hit. And I liked 24, the TV show, but although I was the lead artist, I was also concept artist. And I thought, what am I going to be doing for the couple of years that we make this, other than running the team? So I after a couple of months of development, I said, I'm going to go back to Games Workshop for a bit, because I don't think this is going to be a job that I'm going to get much out of. So I wish you all the best. Enjoy. And maybe once you're done 24, if you go back to doing something more fantasy or sort of sci-fi based, I'll come back.
Some actual world building,
Yeah. So so I waved a sad farewell to Sony Cambridge and moved back to Nottingham and went back to Games Workshop for a spell. But yeah, the whole project's getting cancelled. It's I suppose at Sony at least I could say, well, it wasn't after 3 years of development. It was a few months, and it's sad when something you've invested any time in doesn't make it through. But it could have been way worse, as we see these days. I remember when I was at Blizzard and I was interviewing people, and you talk to people that have spent up to a decade working on a series of games, and you talk to them and they say, I just want to publish something. They've spent 10 years working on games, none of which saw the light of day. That must be intolerable.
Your friend Andy Chambers, who's a legend in Warhammer world,
he is,
moved to Blizzard to work on StarCraft 2, and you're going to help bridge that gap. What was it like moving from the British workshop culture of Games Workshop to the massive high-pressure machine of Blizzard in California?
Well, at the time, Blizzard was still quite hugely successful, but still kind of sort of cottage industry vibe to the place. So I joined Blizzard between the launch of original WoW and Burning Crusade. So the numbers were skyrocketing for them, but they hadn't become the colossus that they were to become later. So it still felt it wasn't a dramatic change at the time, because it was still, they were like crammed into offices that were too small for them. You know, they hadn't moved to their big swanky campus. I joined as art director for Diablo III, which was still a little sort of small, very small team made up largely of survivors from Blizzard North, which is where the first two Diablo games had been made. When Blizzard pulled the plug on that studio, they didn't. I don't think they brought any management down. I think it was only just sort of regular staff that were invited to continue working at Blizzard. In Blizzard South, the Blizzard North people called it. But the biggest challenge for me was actually coping with the attitude that come down from Blizzard North, which is one of fierce independence and corporate resistance. And I was seen as a corporate bring-in. You know, I hadn't been at Blizzard before. I hadn't worked on a game like Diablo. And it was like, well, what does he know? What's he doing here? Why should we listen to him?
You're caught in all worlds there.
Oh yeah, and a foreigner with a weird accent. Yeah, so there was a lot of resistance. I think one of my first jobs in my head was, okay, let's make some new hires. Let's bring in some new artists to hopefully dilute this pool. But it didn't really seem to do that. So after a year of art directing that team, I just said, look, find something else for me at Blizzard or send me back to the UK, because I'm having a pretty miserable time. And to Blizzard's credit, they found me something else. I went to work on Chris Metzen's creative development team for about 18 months and sort of licked my wounds. And during that time, I spent 6 months doing concept art for Wrath of the Lich King for World of Warcraft, and had a really good time. And as just before Lich King shipped, they invited me to join the WoW team full time as their concept artist. So that's what I did. I jumped back into proper development and joined the WoW team. But even then, that was still quite a small. I think we had maybe there was 50 artists at sort of peak WoW when I was on it. I think currently there's about 150 just at Blizzard campus, and then they've got other outsourced studios that do great chunks of the game too. So it still felt when we all got together, it was a big team, but it was still, you know, I was dealing with 15 to 20 artists on a daily basis. Just so it still didn't feel like a monster.
You said that in the early days of Warhammer 40k, that the art often came before the lore was written. So how does it feel? Does it feel surreal to see your drawings from decades ago being treated, I suppose, quite literally, in some respects, as holy scripture by the hundreds of Warhammer novels that exist today?
Yes, it is. Yes, it's surreal. It's because at the time there was a lot of the lore, a lot of the background was just sort of penciled in. Because it was there, it existed there to facilitate the making of miniatures, and the love of the lore and the richness of it that has come through things like Black Library, through like all the novels, and now we're just coming up to, I think, 11th edition of Warhammer 40,000 is about to be released. When I was there working on 2nd edition, which was really the first full edition. So yeah, and I will see, or somebody will let me know at Games Workshop, oh, that miniature, that piece of art you did 25 years ago. Yeah, we're finally getting around to making that as a miniature. I was like, oh, that's nice. And because the technology has advanced to the point where they can kind of comfortably do that now. It's always really cool. It's a thrill, because I still collect miniatures and I still paint a bit when I got the time. So yeah, if there's a new miniature based on something I did, you know, a generation ago.
Does that mean
cool.
There's like a drawer or something in Games Workshop where they pull it out and you go, oh, here's all Mark's work, and they pull out a bit of paper? Or were you doing it digitally then?
No, then it was all traditional, but they gave me all the original artwork back once they'd scanned it all in, because they were actually running out of storage space. They were running out of room to keep the original art, so they were quite keen to give it back to the artists. And I mean, now I think pretty much everything done there is digital. Yeah, but yeah, I guess some of that old art still has a. It's nice to think that they're still checking in on it every once in a while. You know, going back and saying, is there anything we can bring back from the dead for our players for the next edition of whichever codex or army book it might be? Yeah. It's nice to think of that legacy.
Have you got a favourite piece that you've seen go all the way from generative artwork into miniature that you look back on with fondness?
Oh man. There's a few. They a couple of years back they did High Marshal Helbrecht of the Black Templars, and I illustrated him in a little scene with a couple of like a dead orc and a couple of his sort of servitors handling his gear and cleaning the blood off his sword, and they translated that to a miniature just sort of exactly, which was I was not expecting. You know, you expect a single figure to actually create a little vignette. It's really rewarding to see that happen. Yeah, or they'll take an old miniature that they maybe made 20, 30 years ago, but because of technology at the time, or it was a metal miniature, and because of weight and casting restrictions, you couldn't do it justice. And now they go, okay, well now we can do it. We can now make it right with our plastic technology. So we're going to redo it, and we're going to make it look like the original artwork.
Have you bought your own miniatures?
Oh yeah. I mean, occasionally, or actually I should say not occasionally, most often, somebody at Games Workshop will send me one.
Yeah.
If I poke at them, where's my copy?
Come on.
But no, I will go into Games Workshop and buy a miniature
I mean, do you do the same treatments on them if you're painting them, or do you just go, I want to do something different versus what I conceived?
I will when I do like to paint, and I will paint some stuff up. I do like to do like a lot of kit bashing, a lot of custom stuff. I'm not sure. I don't tend to do that. If it's a miniature based on a piece of my art, I like to try and. I think the challenge there actually, because most of my artwork back then was black and white. Okay, I'm going to paint it in color. Okay, what colors should it be? And that's I think the challenge for me then is like to really bring it to life, with color. So yeah, that tends to be the thing I kind of agonize over at that point.
Strangely enough, I was in Games Workshop in Winchester today, and I managed to push my wife into Games Workshop as well, and the guy in there's like, you can have a free tutorial of painting miniatures, and my wife was like, yes, let's go and do it. I don't think she kind of realised that you'd actually buy the kit and then paint it, right? But you never know, it could well be my wife could well be painting some of your artwork in the near future. Well, yeah, I think it'd be an open door policy for me to get new miniatures for a shared joint experience, which I'm very much looking forward to. Excellent. So talking about that, so you've got a philosophy that the game art and the miniatures are the two different interpretations of the real thing. Can you explain why you think that it's a mistake to try and make the art look exactly like the plastic model?
Yeah, I mean. Back in the, I mean, a lot of my illustrations back in the day looked more like the miniature than they did the real thing. I would often, not always, but I would often scale an illustration to look more like the miniature. So you'd have oversized weapons, and the heads would be a bit big, and the hands would be a bit big. And I sort of enjoyed illustrating the miniature as much as the subject. It's both the miniature and the art are artistic interpretations of a thing that we all agree exists in the distant future. So a space marine, we think in the 41st millennium, the space marines are real. Okay, and what we're doing is we're creating artistic interpretations of those through whichever medium we're using. And because miniatures are obviously there's restrictions to that because you're making something that's 32 millimeters tall. There's only so much you can do with that. Even with the plastic technology of today, there's only so much you can do with that. Plus, what you want to make is something that it looks good on a tabletop, that is relatively easy to assemble and fun to paint. And if you do something that's too realistically scaled, then the heads get small, the hands and all the detail gets really, really tiny. And I've seen this with a lot of the sort of independent miniature studios. Because most of the construction is done digitally these days. They're not physically sculpting the miniatures with putty. They're doing them in ZBrush or any one of the myriad 3D sculpting software packages. They can zoom in almost indefinitely down to tiny microscopic levels and sculpt in that incredible detail, which doesn't scan once you printed it, is unpaintable, or it's just an absolute nightmare to paint. And generally speaking, that's not what players want. They want something they can put together and paint. Even if you don't play with it, even if it's just a display piece, you kind of want something that takes the paint nicely, allows you to sort of put your own spin and embellishments on there. You don't want to be slavishly painting away on this endless intricate detail on a miniature that's just, it's just a misery, a chore to actually paint. So I think you make changes. The miniatures make changes to the concepts, to the art, for the benefit of all.
That's a really nice point. I think particularly as the painting image is such a big part of it as well. It's kind of you sort of have that kind of almost like a platonic perfect form of what you think a space marine is, and have that variation in the miniature where it's more accessible and you can actually paint the thing and use it on the tabletop and it makes some kind of sense. That's a really super point. Jumping into the lore a little bit of 40k, so you spent decades visualizing the 41st K. It is notorious for being unrelentingly awful place to live. It's just I enjoy 40k. I've loved reading about it. But it is really depressing. There's no good place to find there that you seem to have just a nice normal life. But actually, I wanted to ask you, is there anywhere in the 41st millennium, some bolt hole somewhere that you've come across? Do you know what? Actually, it would be quite nice to live there. Or just at least not horrifyingly awful
Tolerable
to live there. Yes.
Yeah. I know that in the grim darkness of the far future there is only war, apparently. But that's what they tell you, right? That's the big marketing push. But I was thinking, I mean, for every sort of hive world or industrial planet, I mean, is there going to be an arable farming world? I mean, can you get a free range chicken in the 41st millennium if you've got the money? Wow. Or is everybody eating just this sort of reclaimed paste? Is there a planet that's nothing but apple orchards, for the elite? Because life there would probably be tolerable.
Yeah, hopefully it's just not mashing up ex-humans into protein paste and shipping it out, which would be a little bit depressing. There are those garden worlds, aren't there? The garden worlds for the elite they can go and have a look at, but I think they're fairly few and in between. So maybe working as a gardener there potentially would be quite nice. But I did kind of struggle wondering, is there a place you can go? I did watch. I think it probably was like an AI-generated crossover between Star Trek and Warhammer, and everyone met a very depressing end from the Star Trek bridge crew, which those
two properties don't really align very well, do they?
No.
Very different visions of the future.
There was that kind of like that hope in Star Trek Next Gen, which lasted for about 35 seconds. Before it's sort of ground down by the entire 40k universe.
No, the ideal world of the Federation. I guess if you're living on the sort of the core planets, the idea that everything is this idyllic future is doesn't line up well with the 40k. But I suppose it's what you're doing. I mean, if you're into your sex and drugs and rock and roll, you might have a lovely time as a Dark Eldar Corsair. You know, that might be fantastic.
Absolutely right. Depends who you decide to worship, doesn't it, at the end of the day? So absolutely.
It's a bit of a parallel here with our chat with Jason, that Jason and John nerded out on the horror that is Doncaster, which maybe.
Hey, I lived in Grimsby, so you know,
40k world.
You don't need to tell me about it. I had a good time in Grimsby, but it is, you know, the very name of the place suggests the grimness. I lived on the docks in Grimsby for a couple of years.
Oh.
It was nice. It was a lovely old converted flour mill. It was a lovely spot, but yeah, it was still when the wind was blowing in a certain direction, and you know, off the blimey.
my visit to Grimsby is to go to the football stadium, and it was a cold 2 hours with the wind blowing into the away stand.
Yeah.
The name doesn't really evoke.
Well, it sounds like a dwarf.
Sunshine.
It should be a dwarven city, shouldn't it? Or Grimsburg, maybe.
You've mentioned when we were chatting before that reactions are slowing down, and you've mentioned playing Baldur's Gate, and also leading you towards games like XCOM as well. Do you think the industry is doing enough to design high-end games for older folks who want to still stay deep, but perhaps want fewer Twitch requirements?
I think there's certainly enough range, certainly enough diversity in type of game. I think you'll always have the variations of Call of Duty and MOBAs that demand lightning fast reactions. But I mean, the industry is maybe 50 years old at this point. So even sort of founders are still knocking around it. I think as the gaming population continues to age, I think that they'll probably spend give equal billing, put equal effort into making games for the non-Twitchers.
But we tend to have a bit more disposable income as well.
That's true.
For these $100, £100 games.
That's true, yeah. I think the success of games like Baldur's Gate, anything turn-based over sort of real-time stuff. Yeah, the real-time strategy stuff I always struggled with. Because as a younger man, I was a beast at Counter-Strike. We all were at Sony. We had a team at Sony in Cambridge, and we played internally like every lunchtime for about 6 months. And we didn't realize how good we'd become until we challenged Sony London to a matchup and just decimated them, just destroyed them. I think they quit after about 20 minutes saying, we're not playing with you guys anymore.
It's unfortunately changed a little bit for me. Whereas I play some Call of Duty, and of course you meet an opponent by surprise, to both of us, and it's meant to be a 50-50 split in terms of who gets the win.
Right.
But unfortunately for me, it seems to end badly 95% of the time, which is never ideal.
I was really put off any kind of competitive gaming during my time at Riot, because I was although I wasn't working directly on League of Legends, there was still sort of expectation that you'd be good at the game. Ideally before you ever started working there, but certainly you would play a lot. And if you're in the studio and somebody says, "Hey man, you want to jump on and play?" You would play. If you said no, I'm too busy, that you were treated with the utmost suspicion. It was almost heresy to turn down a match. And I spent a year trying to get just competent, just to the point where I didn't embarrass my teammates. And after a year, I was unable to do it. I was always the weakest link in the team. And I got to a point after a year, I said, "Guys, you just got to stop asking me. I'm not going to play anymore. It's no fun for me. It's no fun for you. Just don't ask me anymore."
Yeah, I find just remembering more than what 4 or 5 keys are. I've always been that way. I've always been sort of like, I rely on the menu or whatever. Yeah,
but even something like League is you can play like a training mode. You can basically play with it. Your team is real people, and then the opposing team is all bots. So it's not competitive. It's not meant to be competitive. It's meant to be for people sort of learning new characters or learning the game. Yeah. And I would go into this anonymously. I'd be playing with people outside of the studio, and I'd say, "Hey man, I'm just trying out this new champion." I wasn't. I was trying to get reasonable with the one champion all the time. But I said, "So I've not played him before. I just want to let you know, if I make some mistakes, please be understanding." And everybody's like, "Oh yeah, sure, no worries." And within 2 minutes, they'd be swearing at me because I didn't do the thing right, and I didn't move through the jungle when I was supposed to. I didn't drop my ult at the right moment. I didn't time it to perfection, and yeah, that was like that was enough for me. I didn't tell them who I was, where I was working. I'm just like, I don't want to subject myself to this anymore.
What were you doing when you were at Riot?
I was a concept artist in the Foundations team, so we were sort of world building the worlds beyond League of Legends. So a lot of the stuff we did reflected back into the game, but we were sort of developing the lore for use in other projects, other games, but also for stuff like Arcane. We did a lot of the environment and building and characters and world stuff outside of that to flesh out each of the, because every if you play League, you know that every champion has come from a particular faction, a particular civilization, and they're really disparate. And what we're trying to do is build a world where all those different civilizations, levels of tech could all exist together. So that was the challenge for us, to kind of have this world hang together in some kind of believable way, because you'll have a champion that has been designed and they're in League of Legends with what feels like 21st century hardware. They got miniguns and rocket launchers, and okay. Well, the world that they're from doesn't really have that. What can we do with the tech to reflect that level of, that sort of style of weapon, that type of impact, without completely breaking the world that champion is supposed to have come from? How can we fantasize these real world weapons in a way that makes them feel at least, vaguely believable when you're up against swords and shields and bows and arrows?
So in that role, you've gone well beyond, I was going to say just art, but obviously art isn't just art, but you've gone beyond the visualization of it into, the whole concept, the whole space around it, to make sure it's consistent and makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, ideally, that's what concept art does. It sort of answers those questions and it solves those problems. And whether you're solving those issues with the words, or whether you're doing it with the pictures, the idea is that's the main role of concept art. I think, to solve problems and offer new perspectives and possibilities. And if you do a good piece of concept art, hopefully it's something that the level designers and the gameplay programmers and the narrative writers will pick up and go, "Oh, this is awesome, let's do more of this."
This all works, yeah. I mean, it's design, isn't it? Because the name makes it sound like you're drawing pictures that other people take inspiration from, but really it's the other way around. You've already done the inspiration, and the visuals are an explanation that you're handing on.
I mean, it can be both. You can be presented with a very, very strict design brief, and all you've got to do is illustrate it. But usually it's way more open and way more loose than that. Sometimes it's nothing. It's
very exciting.
And you just go in blind and boy, here's an idea I had, and it might have no connection with anything that anyone is planning at that point. And hopefully you've got a supportive team, and particularly like a management structure that goes, well, if we do that, that wasn't in the budget. That's going to take another 3 months. We're going to have to spend $500,000 making that. Are we all sure? Are we all sure that we want to do this? And you occasionally then get thought of as difficult because that started with you. But I think it's a concept artist's job to be a bit difficult, to sort of push against the ceiling and challenge expectations. I think if you're not doing that, you're not really doing your job.
And now you have that opportunity, rather more, after working on behemoths like World of Warcraft and around League of Legends. You're focused on Rookery Publications and independent RPG development and games like Dark Deeds. Is doing your own thing more stressful or more liberating than the safety net of that big multi-billion-dollar studio?
It's both. It's liberating, it's exciting, it's all I really want to do now. But it'd be nice if it came with a paycheck. But I've reached that point in my life now where I just what I want to do, the stuff that I enjoy is the stuff that I own or I co-own with my teammates at Rookery. So that's as the months go by, it becomes even more important that the work I do, the time I spend making art is for stuff that's for me. And if I still occasionally take on freelance contracts because it's good to have the money coming in before hopefully Rookery starts to make some decent money. But I'm very aware when I do that, it's time away from what I really want to do. Even if the project is really great, earlier this year I spent a month working. I was back in video games for the first time in quite a while, working with a company called Kintsugi, who were making a new game called The Legend of California, which is a sandbox, slightly fantasized Wild West game. And that came up because their new art director there is a good old mate of mine. He says, "Hey, we need some help with some character design. What, you got some time?" I said, "Yeah, that sounds awesome." And it was really fun. I really enjoyed it. But I'm also going, I had to turn around and tell my Rookery teammates, I got to take a couple of weeks away to do this. And they're very understanding. But I'm still kind of going, okay, I want to get back to the other gig. So yeah, I'm trying to avoid taking on freelance stuff unless it's just irresistible. And then I've got to strike a bargain with myself and my teammates to go, I just need to take a bit of time to do this. Those things don't come up very often because I'm not looking for them. You've got to go hunting for them, because generally speaking, clients don't just reach out of nowhere. You've really got to sort of engage and push and chase. So if I'm not doing that, usually I'm getting left alone.
Usually. Which is a nice place to be. What does irresistible look like?
Oh man, well, okay. So about 5 years ago now, I did a poster for Metallica.
Right.
Yeah.
That was a real sort of career moment. And I did actually reach out to my contacts in Metallica last year because I knew they were doing a European tour this year, and they were playing my hometown of Cardiff. And so I spoke to my contacts there about any chance of me doing the poster for Cardiff, because I did the poster I did for Metallica was for a German date on their tour back in the Worldwide tour in 2019 now, so it's like 7 years ago, 6-7 years ago. And my contact said, "Oh well, we're not doing that stuff directly now, but I'll put your name forward to the studio that we're using, and I'll say nice things about you," which is very good of him. He didn't have to do that, but I never heard back. So it's one of those things. So that would be that's an irresistible thing. If Metallica said, "Yeah, do us a poster for the Cardiff show," I'd had it worked out in my head already. Stuff.
You should do it anyway.
Well, that's always an option, but again, it's like, okay, well, I've got to set myself aside some time to do this. Just again, creatively fun and satisfying, but it's time away from the big picture stuff that I really want to be working on. So and there's always a couple of things in the back of my head that, maybe one day it'd be nice to do this, and maybe as time marches on I'll do some more of that. But I love this. I love the work that I'm doing with Rookery. It is incredibly satisfying. I get to wear all the art hats. Illustrator, concept artist, graphic designer. I do the layout for the books, which has turned out to be an absolute delight for me. It's a weird shift in the brain, because it's not, you wouldn't think it was particularly creative. You think it'd be more, well, it's just putting text in boxes and dropping in bits of art here and there. And yes, that's fundamentally what it is, but there's a real art to it, to what makes a book a page turner, what makes a book something that people want to read, and how you guide the reader through the various chapters and sections and stuff is a real challenge, and I've really enjoyed doing it. Of course, since learning about it, I can't pick up a book or a magazine now without tearing its layout to pieces. All I see now is where is bad choices the layout artist made. What I think are bad choices.
So you've worked on everything from Metallica to Sci-Fi Primal. and the military tech of StarCraft. So if you were to pick one of these other universes that you've helped to create, and were to have them encounter the 40k universe, which one do you think would make for the most engaging artistic visual spectacle? And which one do you think would create the most jarring aesthetic?
I think in terms of what would be a good fit. Last year I worked on a game called Trench Crusade, which is it's sort of the hottest tabletop IP of the moment, and it's essentially it's set in an alternate 1914 in the trenches of the First World War, but it's basically it dates back to the Crusades. You imagine in the 12th century, Crusader knights uncovered a portal to hell and opened it, and humanity has been fighting a long war with the forces of hell for 800 years. So it's a First World War, but it's humanity versus the demonic armies. So that's your I mean, it's grim and it's grimmer and darker than the 41st millennium, really, to begin with. But if you imagine, so if that's your setting, and then you imagine like the Tyranid hive fleets reach Earth sort of 38,000 years before they were due to, and you imagine you're a humble human infantryman stuck in the trenches, and you see these Tyranid biospores raining down from the skies. I mean, I think that's going to be an interesting conflict.
That needs to be made.
I wonder now, will the forces of hell make an easy truce with humanity to fight off the Tyranid invaders? Well, I don't know. Or would they team up with the Tyranids? Because the Tyranids won't care. They're unrelenting. They don't see. They just see food source. They don't see
they'll eat anyone.
Evil. Exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't think you can bargain with the Tyranids.
It reminds me a little bit of a book I read, or a series of books called In the Balance by Harry Turtledove, and it was like an alternate history, and it was set in the Second World War, but rather than just the Axis and the Allies, what had happened a couple hundred years previously was this alien race had spied Earth, and they took 200 years to get here.
Right.
And so they kind of equipped it for basically 200 years before World War II. And they arrived. And so it was kind of evenly matched, because you had very high tech, but loads of resources on the Allied and Axis side. And that made for some really interesting spectacle in terms of, both in terms of reading and also in terms of the artistry around it as well. And also kind of what that would have looked like if it was scaled into a graphic novel. I thought that would have been amazing. So yeah, I'm really keen on these kind of alternate histories, but with a twist. Like the gates of hell being opened sounds, well, it just sounds awesome. Or to read about anyway.
Yeah, I mean, yes, that sort of framework is really interesting, and it was the first thing I'd worked on as an artist that required historical reference gathering. Even though it's a sort of alternate reality and it's fantasized, I was still doing concept art or illustrations actually for characters that were that were early 20th century. There was some flexibility in terms of where you could draw a reference from. It was sort of first half of the 20th century, because you can assume that maybe technology has marched a little faster due to the constant war. So maybe you could probably bring in Second World War guns and stick them on your characters. It's probably okay. That would be fine. You maybe go even up to the sort of the 50s, the sort of what they call it, diesel punk aesthetic. There are planes better than just biplanes flying about the place. But it's funny because you get somebody. Somebody was criticizing the fact that I had illustrated a M3 grease gun. One of the characters I'd drawn having one of those, which is very much Second World War. And they said, well, that's too late. That's 15, 20 years too late. Ignoring the fact that what I had drawn was a trench ghost, which is a reanimated corpse wielding this gun. Now, you don't have a problem with that. just with the technology he's wielding.
I think there's like certain icons that you see in terms of military hardware that keep appearing in the future, even though they're kind of very retro, like those. there's a particular name for the shape, but you know those kind of very, very old World War One tanks,
Yeah.
and they kind of look a little bit like a squashed square with the tanks go around the outside.
Yes.
That makes sense. The track, yeah.
The original tank, yeah.
Yeah, the original. They appear in Warhammer. Even though the 41st Millennium, they've got some of those, but of course they're ginormous. But I think there are those sorts of just you get a shape, you get an idea, which is just I know, iconoclastic almost. They appear everywhere. I
It was really interesting just doing my historical research and seeing what weaponry was about. In the first sort of 20 years of the 20th century, some extraordinary pieces of hardware. And I went the last time I was back in the UK. I went to the Imperial War Museum to see some of the stuff in the flesh, which was really eye-opening as well. Yeah. In terms of misaligned 40k, although of course I wasn't an original creator of anything medieval, I could see Sir Dan Fortescue shoehorned into a set of Space Marine armor, swinging his sword across the 40k battlefield might be peculiar.
A crossover with the Flashman would be quite good, I think, as well. Yeah, that would be more of a comic element to it.
So you touched on it a little bit just earlier. You're diving into the graphic design side of RPG adventures, concept to layout. What have you learned about the difference between a cool drawing and, as you were saying before, that functional piece of game design that keeps people wanting to turn the page, and that you might be seeing in other places and going, oh, they're doing it so wrong?
I think this again. The service of the artist is to service the narrative. I mean, sometimes the art comes first, and the world and the lore can be built around it. But it's ensuring that what you provide as an artist, or even layout artist or graphic designer, makes the reader or the player's experience as rewarding and as exciting as possible. You kind of want to fire up the imagination a bit. And it's quite certainly doing working on RPG books. You because so much of the end result is going to be maybe a GM showing a picture or reading the text or putting their own spin on it. You kind of want to just give them enough inspiration and excite them enough to kind of potentially take it in their own direction. So it's kind of quite liberating, because I'm not designing for 3D production. I'm not designing, I'm not drawing something that needs to be a miniature. Or I'm not drawing something that needs to be an in-game asset in a video game. So you can kind of play a little bit. You can kind of go with something a little more abstract or a little more sort of esoteric. You can throw ideas out there that would be difficult to render in the actual world, because nobody's asking you to do that. You're providing creative inspiration for a story, so you get to be
someone will instance it.
Yeah.
At the table with their
Yeah. You want to do. I mean, obviously, I want to draw everything, and I'll get a wonderful document through from our writers, and I've got to be disciplined with myself and saying, well, no, we've only got space in the book for three pieces, or I've only got time to do 3 or 4 pieces, which is always a problem with me. I always just want to draw everything, and I have to realize, well, it can't. I have to be selective. So I have to sort of pick my moments. Beyond the stuff like, we need to illustrate all the NPCs, because that's always been a bit of a bugbear of mine. Is that you pick up a book. And it's got a detailed monster section or NPC section, and half of the things in there are not illustrated. You go, no, you got to do something for each entry. You've got to find the time to even if it's a loose sketch, just to give something. You can't leave an empty box. So that's always the must do. That's the must do. Must illustrate all the NPCs, all the monsters, and then with the time and the space left to you, do your best to pick your favorite moments from elsewhere.
Do you do your own GMing?
Not for many, many years. I used to, as in my teens when I was first playing D&D originally, and then RuneQuest and Traveller and a whole bunch of other games. I ran a 3-year RuneQuest campaign, which 3 years doesn't sound that long now, but when you're in your teens, it's massive.
Yeah, it's a lifetime.
To maintain interest from a group of teenagers for 3 years for anything.
That's an accomplishment. These days, certainly. 3 minutes.
Right. But I haven't GM'd anything. I mean, we do. I have a sort of casual gaming group here. When we get together, some of the games we play require a mixture of GMing and role playing, and those are always fun. There was a Sherlock Holmes investigations, Baker Street investigations. I can't remember, and it's like a choose your own adventure, but you do it in a group. And we would pass around the book. We had a bowler hat, and you would put the bowler hat on to read the section. And if there were accents required, that was always an awesome opportunity to have a go.
Well, so way back you were doing a bit of GMing, and you spent a few years as a budding musician, and as you mentioned, a freelance artist before getting into Games Workshop. So looking at the industry now, concerns about AI and all kinds of generated content rather than humans being at the core.
Yeah.
What is the one piece of Mark Gibbons' advice for a young artist who wants to create the next iconic gaming character?
Focus on your strengths, I suppose. Don't try to be all things to all people. Know what you're good at, and be as good at that as you can possibly be. It is very much an age of specialization. The idea of being a good all-rounder. I think there's still scope for that. I think certainly smaller developers, smaller studios are always looking for somebody that can turn their hand to anything. But most game vacancies are going to be, we need somebody to do characters, or we need somebody to paint environments, or we need somebody to do we need a prop artist that can build crates and barrels, and just if you're putting a portfolio together, make sure it contains nothing but your best work. If you've got 10 fantastic pieces and 10 all right pieces, only put the 10 fantastic ones in. Nobody's going to thank you for volume. If you can show your process, if you can show how you can go from thumbnail sketches to finished illustration or finished defined concept, and an art director can look at your sketches and understand your process, understand your thought. That's huge. That's massive, because anyone can do, anyone. Glossy illustrations are not hard to come by, Even before we start talking about the horrors of AI, the heat death of the creative universe, as I've started referring to it as. Even without all that, it's not hard to get to give an illustrator a couple of good concepts and let them do an amazing illustration. Getting the concepts great is the bigger challenge. So if you're a concept artist, I think there'll always be demand for that. I'm hoping that the AI. When I say AI, I mean generative AI. I mean your Midjourneys and your ChatGPTs, the stuff that just takes the creative out of the process. I understand there's value in artificial intelligence, but not at the expense of the creative soul of humanity, because I think that is what has been on the line for a while. It's nice to see pushback. It's nice to see some the community players turn around and say, we're not going to buy your thing. Yeah. If you don't have the respect for us or the respect for artists and writers to actually employ artists and writers, why would I have respect for the thing that the AI has generated? Why would I waste my time reading something that if you didn't put the effort into actually making it real?
It's not been crafted. I mean, no. We value craft over just production.
Yeah, it's been nice to see some. I mean, I know there's still a lot of certainly the bigger players in the industry have been either embracing or certainly considering going AI, and because it's cheap, right? If your team is 500 artists, right? If you're one of those AAA studios that requires 500 artists, if you can get rid of half of them and replace them with just AI run through it all, I mean, the temptation must be massive.
Massive, yeah, but it's a massive experiment as well.
I mean, I know some. Yeah, I mean, I know some studios that have a great sort of catalog of creative assets are using AI and said, all we're doing, the only content we're gonna provide is like all the textures we've already created. So we need to create 200 new floor tiles. So what we're going to do, we're going to give the AI all the floor tiles we've ever made and say, make us 200 new floor tiles. And it's I mean, yeah, you're doing some artists out of a job, but most artists don't really want to create 200 bloody floor tiles. But it's the thin end of the wedge. I've had a zero tolerance approach to it because I think it's the thin end of the wedge. I just think you let it in. It's the temptation. the draw of it. Oh, it'd be easy to just have it do some rough ideas instead of Googling for images on this particular thing. Why don't I just let the AI do it? It's just darkness. It's the path of the dark side is what it is. And as cool and sexy as the dark side is, it's ruinous ultimately.
Is there anything, Mark, that you want to trail at the end of this from all of your projects?
I would just encourage your listeners to go check out Rookery Publications, where we've got big RPG plans for later this year. We're thick in the depths of development right now, and that's really fun. And before the end of the year, we hope to have something significant happening. You can buy Dark Deeds, which is the board game that we put out in partnership with Modifius, who are a big indie UK board game publisher. I think probably by the time this interview comes out, I think they're having a summer sale. You might be able to get our game at a discount. That would be awesome. So yeah, we'll put links to that on the Rookery site. So yeah.
And we'll get the links to that on the show notes.
Yeah, we have a Patreon called Inside the Rookery, which shows we do interviews and features on little windows into the business of creating not just tabletop stuff, but video game stuff too, and the creative processes of the games industry. So just swing by rookerypublications.com and check us out.
Check that out. Yeah.
Oh, and you can also, I've got a portfolio site called mgartworks.com, which people are welcome to just, if you want to go look at my pictures, and you're welcome to sort of say hello. Feel free.
Oh, fantastic.
No, it's been great talking to you today and hearing about your career and all the stuff about creating concepts and thinking of all kinds of different universes, making them consistent and making it work. Looking for your own apocryphal error. Not apocryphal. Is it apocryphal? No, that's not the right word. That's the word I'm thinking
Sounds
of.
good there.
And anachronistic.
Oh, there you go.
Yes. Anachronistic is mistakes. Can't even say the word. But yeah, it's been a great conversation today. Thanks very much.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Lovely chatting with you guys too. And I wish you all the best.
And yourself, Mark. And I'll definitely tell my wife who to thank for the artwork she'll be painting at Warhammer.
Oh, awesome. Yeah. I look forward to seeing. Please do share some results once you start painting some miniatures. That'd be awesome.
Oh, well. Take care, Mark. All the very best.
Thank you.
Take care.
Cheers.
Bye.
Thanks. And thanks to you for listening. Tune in next time for another amazing guest.